Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host, Bill Hirschman, editor of FloridaTheaterOnStage.com, and I'm joined by our usual panel here, Iris Acker, longtime actress, producer, director, and all-around theater doyen. And we also have Michael McKeever, actor, playwright, designer. And finally, Karen Stevens, longtime actress and director and writer. And today we have a very special guest that we're really proud to have. We have Lori Sessions, who is the program director for the CAPPIE's program, which we'll explain to you in a minute, as well as a longtime teacher in the Broward County School District as an arts and particularly theater educator currently at J.P. Taravella High School. Welcome and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the state now of theater education in the public school systems. What does that entail these days for people who haven't been in high school in 20 or 30 years? What does it look like?
I think the bar has been raised for theater education in schools all across the country. The typical let's put on a play is of course still there and still important, but now we're dealing with a lot more student-driven work, so a lot more student-designed sets, sound, lights, lots of work in student direction and writing as well. But I also think that the audience and the students expect a higher quality than maybe some of our productions in the past, at least when I was in high school or some of us were in high school. So you're really in many of the schools dealing with a very high quality theatrical experience for the students as well as the audience.
You had indicated, we had talked about in the green room that when we were in school, we had very vanilla, shall we say, plays that were being offered. But now there's much more mature and thoughtful and in-depth kind of work. Can you talk a little bit about it? You're doing Ragtime this season.
We are. I think a lot of theater educators are looking for a way to teach students, not only the students involved in the production, but also the students in the schools and in their community. And so many of our theatrical works have wonderful lessons to teach. So I definitely feel like that envelope has been pushed a little bit. Every teacher has to keep in mind their community standards and their principals' community standards, but there are certainly a lot more shows done today in the high school that probably wouldn't have been done in years past.
You do Broadway shows, and then you do them all, and whatever the content is, I noticed you stick to them.
Yes, yes.
I must interject here because my favorite thing is we fortunately interviewed you before, and we went to the schools. We're going to see some of the footage from at school. And when I interviewed the students, they didn't all want to be in theater. I got a kick out of this one gentleman. He said, no. I said, I'm going to be a doctor. I said, well, why are you here? He said, well, I'm working on my patient-doctor relationship, he says. Oh, I thought, they should all make them do that, teaching them how to have a bedside manner.
I think that's a big thing in, so many parents too say, I don't want my son or daughter to take theater because they're not going to be an actor. But there's so many valuable life skills, as we all know, in the theater for every generation, but especially now where students are so tied to technology and their phones and their computers. Learning to work as a team, having to have those the interactions with the technicians, the other cast members or whatever, a lot of that's not happening because a lot of their social skills are done over a phone or over email or what have you, or social media. So, besides the responsibility and the commitment and those kinds of life skills that we're already learning in the theater, there's a lot of that communication that's happening that I think is instrumental for today's young people.
Do you find that you're also building a new audience in the sense of kids who go, I didn't know this was going to be this much fun, or I'm enjoying it this much?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What kind of reactions do you get?
Especially, my diehard theater kids, they may have grown up in the theater or they're being exposed through the program. But I love the reaction from those students in like a Theater 1 class that maybe got put in there because they need a fine arts credit, or they maybe, you know, their parents said, you need some more confidence. You go and take this theater class or something, and they're a little scared to death. And they get to see those first plays, and they just have no idea about this world and how exciting it can be. And just this week, my Theater 2 class did a children's play. And for a lot of them, that was their first time on a stage in front of an audience. And, you know, it's very exciting, scary for some of them, but also very exciting to have that experience.
Lori, speaking about the students, you've been doing this for 14 years now.
21.
21.
Yeah.
It's an old
Yeah.
So you
a
obviously
while.
started when you were what,
Yes.
6 years old? So that's
Absolutely.
so that's quite a stretch. Children or young adults have evolved over the past 20 years. What have you seen this happen? Obviously, the young people are much older now than they were back in the day when I was that age. How has that impacted you and your program?
I think the biggest impact that I have seen is actually on the negative side is there's much more a lack of commitment now, both on the students but also from the parents. You know, the generation where you said, oh, you made this commitment, whether it was to play soccer or to be in a production or whatever, and you need to fulfill it. And then if you don't want to play soccer ever again or do theater ever again, you don't have to. That's gone. So I have a lot more students that I have trouble with students showing up to rehearsal, and it may not be them. It may be their parents that say, you know, I'm sorry, you can't go to rehearsal today, or you know, I can't give you a ride, or you'll have to walk, or you know, it's. I think as the family dynamics have changed, I think that has been, for me personally, that has been my biggest challenge, is keeping up with that. The understanding that it's a commitment, and it's not just about, oh, it's just a high school show.
Right.
It's about those life skills that they're learning, whether it's high school theater. You know, my frequent comment to them is, well, if you worked at McDonald's and you said, you know, you just didn't show up for work that day, what would happen? Well, I'd get fired. Okay, well, this is the same thing, because I'm teaching you how to be a good employee.
And the parents don't seem to get that.
I mean, some are fantastic. Some get it, they reinforce it, but I'm personally running into more and more parents that don't understand that I'm trying to train them for their futures, whatever career that may be.
Whatever it would be, yes.
Sure.
Very much so.
So there's an awards component in South Florida high school theater called the CAPPIEs. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how you got connected with that? Because they existed before they got here to South Florida.
They were started in Washington, D.C., and I was actually home on maternity leave, so it was a very kind of calm time for me, as I was enjoying being a new mom, and I didn't have rehearsals, and I wasn't teaching at the time, and I pulled up a publication that talked about this Critics and Awards program that was founded in DC, and I said, you know, South Florida has such a vibrant high school theater community, we really need this program. So I made an email or phone call, and I said, hey, you know, I'm interested in finding some more information about this. And that next day, I think they called and said, oh, we hear you want to start CAPPIES in South Florida. Let us send you the package. And the next thing you know, at the June drama teacher meeting, I was standing in front of them saying, okay, I want to bring this new program to South Florida. Who's willing to give it a try with me? And 5 schools total, including mine, were like, yeah, okay, we'll give it a try. And then it just took off from there.
Define CAPPIES.
The CAPPIES is a Critics and Awards program, so teams of high school students go around to other high school productions, and they have a very in-depth discussion about the show, when it opened, when it premiered, what's strong about the production, what could be improved about the production, and those discussions are teacher-led. And then they go home and they write an approximately 350-word review on those high school productions with some pretty strict guidelines. We don't want to scar any students, so we our phrase is to praise specifically and criticize generally. They are still students. And then some teacher mentors pick the top reviews, and we send them to Florida Theater on Stage and for publication. And then at the end of the year, those same critics vote on, best scenic design, best actor, best vocalist, best show, or what have you. And there's some strict rules on that too. It was developed by teenagers, so they tried to find all ways that they could try to game the system and work against that. So there's this really complicated voting system, but they then vote for their peers, essentially, of what they feel was the best work in the South Florida high school theater community.
I've had the great pleasure to present at the Cappies a couple of times, and it's a blast. Talk about the actual award ceremony itself.
The actual award ceremony is at the Broward Center for the Performing Arts, and it is red carpet gala. The students are all in their prom dresses or their suits or their tuxes. They're so excited. Anytime I think about, maybe it's time to give it up, I'm reminded by some student's story about how important Cappie's was for them that night. And we're packing the Broward Center, and they're just so excited. These hundreds of students that have been nominated. We have an opening number that students from all the different schools participate in, and then the 5 nominated plays and musicals present either a song or a scene from their show at Gala, and then we give out all of the awards.
I want to go back to high school.
It's spectacular. It's an award show, but the energy is almost like a stadium game.
Right.
It's just these waves of cheers and this young, vibrant energy. It's really wonderful.
We've done that. We've done red carpet interviews there as well, and I get a big kick out of it. And I've had, last time, wasn't last year, but a couple of years ago, I did the red carpet, and I had returning students. Do you remember that? And some of them had really made it.
Yes.
What success can you really talk about?
It's hard because there's so many schools involved, and every school has their success story of students that have gone on. But we have actors here professionally in South Florida that were once Cappie students or Cappie's Award winners. For me personally, I've had a past Cappie Award winner that was in Wicked on Broadway and is now in the tour in the West Coast. Playwrights, producers. I have students that have gone on to start their own event management company. They're everywhere. Dancers, choreographers.
That's so good to hear.
Several who are in LA working in the film industry or trying their best to break into the TV. I've had students do independent films, and they're definitely, you take those students who have such a passion, they're gonna keep pursuing that passion.
It must be so incredibly rewarding. Can you tell early on which are going to be the stars? Can you say that one? I think has. Is it possible to do that as a teacher?
I think you definitely spot the talent and that spark of energy that's different. The thing that's hard to predict is how much tenacity they'll have. As we know, this business is hard. So they may have the talent, but may not have the determination to keep knocking on those doors, or may get frustrated by that, or maybe may decide that New York City isn't the place for them, and they're looking for cruise lines, theme parks, regional theater, some other aspect of the performing arts. So, but there's definitely a spark.
Bill is a critic. I get a big kick out of the fact you actually have a Critics Award for the critics. How do you feel, Bill, I'm asking Bill before, about these students who have had no training in being a critic? It's just an opinion. We could say that about all the critics too, of course, but I wouldn't say that about you. As critic to critics, these kids,
Oh, I'm tickled.
making these big decisions.
I'm tickled to death. I read everything before we publish it, and I'm really encouraged by the quality, but just the fact that there are students who are interested in criticism, and they may not go on to be critics, they may go on to be actors, or they may just go on to be people who will be audience members. But it is so it feels wonderful because it gives me a sense, first of all, that there's going to be another generation of people who look at all kinds of arts, not just theater, but film and music, from a critical standpoint. So it makes my day to read this stuff. The other thing, though, I really wanted to say, when I go to the Cappie's Gala at the end of the year, anytime I begin to wonder whether theater has a future, granted it may not have the scope of a video game or something, but to see just the sheer number of young people filling the Broward Center. I'm not talking about the Amaturo, I'm talking about the major. Yep. And to hear, like you said, the overwhelming passion is just the most encouraging thing.
Because they'll love theater for their life. I mean,
Exactly.
whether or not they do it as a profession,
Exactly.
they will be in that audience for a lifetime because it's in them.
And we need that. We need that so badly to fill those seats.
Now, no, go ahead.
Oh, no, well, I was just going to ask about, is there any kind of formal program for training the kids to be critics? And is it aside from their regular school curriculum?
It is. They volunteer to be critics. Each school is only allowed 6 critics, so usually teachers have their own criteria for choosing them. From my school in particular, they have to submit a sample review so that I can read their writing and see they can review any show they've seen, just so I can get an idea. And then we train all of the critics on a day in September, and we talk about the Cappie's rules and declining shows and volunteering for shows and things like that. But then we do most of it. A chunk of our training is on how to evaluate theater, what you're looking for, but also how to discuss it in a positive and constructive way without tearing down anybody, because Cappie's really wants to celebrate high school theater, and we want people to get better. So we want to criticize because that's how we improve, but we want to do it in a way that's encouraging and, hey, next time maybe try this rather than this really stunk. So we have training both on the discussion at the shows as well as how to write and what to include in the reviews and the technical elements and the historical aspects of the plays and that sort of thing.
Do you have any idea of whether any of students have gone on to pursue that career-wise?
And the criticism, I don't know. I know some students have written at the college level, but I don't know if anyone has gone on past that.
Yeah, because there used to be, the newspapers themselves used to have programs that trained critics, that gave them an outlet. And those have all, for financial reasons, have evaporated. John Thomason came out of the Sun Sentinel as a high school critic. And it's sad that you guys are among the few places that are encouraging this, so it makes me very happy. I want to ask a little bit about, go back and talk a little about arts education. I'm not going to ask about any specific school district, but what kind of commitment do you sense over your 21 years from state and federal levels towards, what kind of opinion do you think there is of arts education?
Well, it's interesting because my other hat, I'm the president of the Florida Association for Theater Education as well. So I've had a lot more exposure in the last 3 years to theater education on the state level. Right now the big push is all of our assessments and testing students in the schools. And there was a big push from the state, that every course needed an assessment at the end of the year. So I was part of the team that helped to write and review the questions for the theater exam. Now we're seeing some pullback on that. And so I hope that we are going backwards a little bit on the assessment piece, because the testing has consumed the schools to the point that we can't teach what we want to teach in, let's say, our theater education curriculum or any arts education curriculum, because our students from when we start this week, from March till the end of the year, are just doing one test after another for the state. So I think, unfortunately, that's been the focus in the last few years. The theater courses are still offered, and most of what I've seen in the schools, as long as the students are signing up for them, they're continuing to offer them. But I would love to see some more time to do that.
Are the funding levels funding is never where you want it to be, but how is funding in general?
To be honest, for most of our theater education programs in the schools, they are not funded. They're not a budget item. My salary is part of the budget, of course, and as long as I have students to support that salary, it's okay. But otherwise, theater, for the most part, theater programs are not a budgeted item. The only good news with that is they can't take it away. So, we're out there doing the car washes and selling the tickets and doing whatever we can to raise the money to produce these shows, because really the teacher salary is the only thing that's on that budget.
But because shows have gotten so much bigger and so much more complicated, that's a lot of money to raise.
It is. My production of Ragtime this fall was one of 5 musicals in the state of Florida to be selected for the Florida State Thespian Festival in Tampa. So I'm busing that show up to Tampa to perform for 2,500 thespians, and my students are ecstatic. But that show will cost $28,000 to remount and take it to Tampa. That does not include the students' transportation, their hotel, their registration fees. That's just the production and, reproducing it, but then also getting it to Tampa.
Not to be flip, that's a lot of car washes right there.
It is.
How do you raise that money?
I'm really fortunate in my program. I think because I've been there so long, we have a really strong community base of alumni parents, people who've lived in the community that have seen my shows for 10, 15, 20 years that come to every show. So I'm really fortunate that I feel like we have that support. We are doing benefit performances of Ragtime to re-rehearse it, and we're charging a higher ticket price than we normally do. We're charging $25, but that sole purpose. We raised $8,000 doing popcorn sales and all those kind of traditional school sales, bingo nights, whatever we can do. But then we're hoping that the bulk of the money comes from ticket sales from seeing the show.
Well, so that's unusual because most theaters can't depend on their ticket sales at all.
Right.
At all, a very small point. I want to ask one other thing. Stage managing should be a cost just for stage managing. I feel every actor should be a stage manager at least once to appreciate what they're doing. What about your stage managers?
I'm really fortunate in that, or I guess part of my vision, all of my actors have to do set building hours. So they have to do some kind of tech work so that they do appreciate that side. Plus, my program is really large, so the roles are a little bit competitive. So students who maybe want to perform, they may be working behind the scenes until they get the opportunity for that role. My stage manager has been on stage and on headsets, so he's done both.
One thing before we go too far, I want to make sure that you have a chance to tell the audience how they can find out more about the Cappies.
Good question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I only ask good questions.
Cappies.com/SFC for South Florida Cappies is where you can get more information on Cappies.
SFC. They haven't put it on a couple of times.
Is this a program they can get involved with mid-semester, or do they have to queue up for the beginning of the year?
We do have a January training for schools that want to join in January, but of course we've passed that, so they would want to join in August of next year. And of course, they're always welcome to come to Gala and check us out.
How many schools are involved in the Cappies program?
I think right now we have 26 or 27 schools involved.
And they're in Broward and in Palm Beach to some degree?
Mm-hmm.
Right, but none in Miami-Dade yet.
No, because because the students have such to drive from show to show, that's too long a distance. So Miami-Dade, there are some people that are interested in starting a Miami-Dade chapter, so if they want more information, they can let me know. I'll help them get started.
The Cappies are no longer, they're no longer just an American phenomenon. They're in Canada too now.
Yes, there are 3 chapters in Canada.
Wow.
Wow, that's great. So, the shows that you directed there, could you just tell us some of the shows that you directed in the past?
At the high school?
At the high school? Mm-hmm.
This year is Ragtime and a play called Walk Two Moons. I've done Our Town. My other productions that went to state were Beauty and the Beast, Les Miserables, and On the Town. Mm-hmm. But anything, I've done Shakespeare, Moliere, to contemporary musicals, to the classics. My goal is over 4 years, I want the students to have a very different exposure to a lot of different genres. So.
And it's not an art school, it's just a regular
Nope, it's
school,
just a
so what you're
regular
doing
school.
is pretty extraordinary.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
When I was in school, it was Your Good Man Charlie Brown, and you're saying you did Les Mis.
Right.
I know, right?
Yeah,
We did Oliver.
I have very high expectations, and we're constantly pushing that bar.
Where would you like to see arts education in South Florida go? What's the next place to take it?
I just would really like to see every student have the opportunity to be involved in arts education. Some kind of exploration in the arts, because I think a lot of them, they don't know they have that talent because they've never been exposed to it. So, every year I discover some student in my program that has never done theater before and actually is quite talented. So, just have those students be having the chance to explore that would be fantastic.
Is there a resistance, or what's the obstacle from
Money.
your getting where you want to go?
Yeah, I think just understanding that the arts are academic. I think we have such a push right now to academic and testing that, they tend to think, oh, that's just a play, or that it's frivolous. And there's so much that students learn in arts education that is academic and that does help them in their futures. And I think, the time to do that is important.
Well, I want to thank Lori Sessions,
Thank you.
and thank you very kindly for explaining all of this to us. I really hope that the general public becomes to appreciate what you guys are doing. And really, I cannot say more than, there's no way to say enough about the Cappies program, which I'm obviously a big booster of, and you should come to their gala every spring. It's wonderful. Anyway, thank you all for joining us here on Spotlight on the Arts. I want to thank our panel, and I hope to see you come back here in another week. And if you have any interest in knowing what else is going on in Florida theater and South Florida theater, check out the calendar and the news on floridatheateronstage.com. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.